And so I sat on my bed and I thought, how quickly can I get to Oakland Airport and get on a flight? So I wasn't here last time.
Good evening, everybody. This meeting is hereby convened. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Members of the public are invited to address the authority regarding any item that's not listed on the agenda. Please complete one of the speaker cards in advance if you wish to address it. Are there any members of the public here that have signed up to speak?
I have no cards at this time.
Okay. Next item is approval of minutes of the previous meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item is the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the consent calendar. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. So that brings us down to regular agenda items, and the first one is item 4.8.6, Interstate 80, Central Avenue Operational Improvements, Phase 1. Authorization for Executive Director to approve the plan, specifications, and estimates for construction and advertise for bids.
Good evening, Chair and board members. My name is Ivan Ramirez, and I am the construction manager for the authority. And today, I'm asking for an action item to approve Resolution 1719P, which will authorize the executive director to approve the project design in accordance to Government Code Section 830.6 to preserve design immunity, to publicly advertise the construction contract at the director's discretion, to approve changes in issue addenda to the bidding documents, and to publicly open all bids. I also want to give you a brief refresh for those that are familiar with the project and to introduce the other board members that don't know about the project. But this project has been in our books for a long, long time, and it has taken many shapes, and the project eventually was split into two, and this is Phase 1, which is primarily operational improvement projects on Central Avenue in El Cerrito and the city of Richmond. This is the location of the project, and the primary problem here is a severe backup going east from Interstate 80, and that is due to the high volume of traffic and also because there's not enough left turn underneath the bridge in this slide, so traffic tends to back up, and the way this project is going to address that issue is during peak times is not going to allow a left turn onto westbound I-80, and instead is going to direct traffic to move to I-580, which is running almost parallel, and they meet within a mile of each other, and I will show in the next slide. So this sign will go on as is currently planned during weekend peak hours and not during other times. And there will be a turn to Jacuzzi Street, which is parallel to the on-ramp that will be allowed to allow local traffic to go through the street. So then this is where traffic is going to get on to 580. And like I stated earlier, the traffic will merge onto I-80, which is the destination of people that are turning left on I-80. And that will hopefully address the issues that we have at this location. So with that, I seek your approval to approve Resolution 1719P, and I'm available to any questions you might have.
Who has questions? We have Motion from Tatson, a second from Pierce for, to approve it. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item, 4.1, authorization for staff to replace paper-based bid process with electronic bidding for all future projects. Well, that's progress.
Thank you, Chair Butt is exactly right. Staff is seeking approval to go into an electronic and web-based electronic bidding system. And primarily what it is a cloud-based bid management system that where we distribute the plans and all relevant information for a bid electronically, and by the same time, we receive those bids electronically so that there is no need for a paper bid to be submitted. So what are some of the benefits? First one is that it's secure. The vendor has certain security measures, and it's confirmed when a bidder actually submits the bid that it can be traced back to that location or that the source via a password. We also immediately and instantly communicate with all potential bidders. There is no need to send emails or to send faxes. Once you update something in the system, it will immediately notify all the bidders, and they will have the ability to go back into the system and look at all the information that's been changed. There is no need to print plans or specs. Everything's available on the system. And once the bids are received and the bids are open, and we're going to open bids the way we normally do, we're going to put them up on screen here, and we're going to electronically open them. But one of the advantages is the information is already there available where we can instantly analyze the bids, as opposed to have somebody go through all the information, input it into different tables, and review for all the check marks. It will be there available because the system will inform us if there is something that was missing from the bidders. And in fact, as the bidders are submitting their bids, the system will also let them know if there's something that they're missing, and they will ask them if they still want to go ahead and submit the bid, or they're going to have the opportunity to go back and correct if they're missing a checkbox or a form that they haven't filled out. So with that, we expect that errors and omissions will be minimized. We will very quickly be able to rank the top bidders and get the processing motion so that if there's any protest, that entire cycle is accelerated. Eliminate paper waste, because again, you're not dealing with paper anymore. And we also eliminate the need for a bid runner. When we open bids here, normally it's like 30 people in this room running around with phones, making last-minute changes to their bids. And with this system, we will eliminate the need for the bidders to do that. And overall, we hope to end the protest. You know, we get a lot of protests. The last protest was particularly difficult because it was about a decimal point in how it was tabulated in their bid. And with this system, everybody should have the same way of showing their decimals. So staff reviewed 3 vendors, and we focused on Bid Express, and that's the one that we're proposing. And part of the reason why we're doing it is because both Caltrans and the County of Los Angeles use them, so they have some experience with California bidding. Also, it's free to the authority. The way it works is that bidders pay $50 per bid, or they also have the opportunity to pay $600 per year. If they pay the $50, they're only able to bid on the one project. If they pay the $600 a year, they can bid on all the projects that are available through eBid Express. And they also offer e-bonding. So that's another innovation that has come recently, and we're going to offer that to the bidders to have security for their bids. And I just want to give you a quick show and feel of how it's going to look. Once the bidder accesses Bid Express, they're going to be able to find our project. This is Sand Creek. It's an old project, but we just put it in there as a trial. And they're going to be able to look at the general information when the bids are due, when we advertise, and the description of the project. We're also going to be able to keep a Q&A available. And this is very helpful because normally when there's an addenda, you have to again, fax them or email it to them, and they have to come back and acknowledge that they have reviewed them. Here, it will be automatically be able to download whatever changes I made and be able to acknowledge when they submit their bid that they have read the addendum. And over here at the bottom is the bid items, and you can see all the way to the right where the prices will be, the item prices will be inserted. Then we will open up the bids, and this table, it's what it will automatically present to us. In the system we have in place right now, one of our CM consultants has to actually grab all the bids and tabulate them. That can take several hours, and then somebody else has to check them because errors are common. By doing this system, we will completely eliminate the need to do that because it will be immediately tabulated, immediately can be analyzing the bids for any front bidding or any other irregularities that we might have. So we're very excited about this system that we ask you to put in place. I think that it will be saving. It will eliminate errors, protests, and it will allow us to be at the forefront of innovation in this type of processes. So I'm open to any questions you might have.
Questions? No?
Welcome to the 21st century. This is great. I know you've been talking about this for some time. A few questions. On the first level, does this put us in a position as an agency as we do more direct source bidding for construction, that because of the detail this comes, is this somehow qualifying their bid? And are we accepting that, or are we still taking it as a lump sum? Because it's robust, the detail is great, but when you accept a bid that has that much detail, can they point later to say, well, I only bid 420 feet, and that's all I'm giving you? So are we accepting some new level of liability that qualifies their bid by this process?
So with respect to a specific example that you gave, that wouldn't change because the quantity won't change. That we put that into the system. We put the quantity. They only bid the price. So we put the description, the quantity, and then they put the price, and that's how they come up to it. So,
Okay, so we're still
that
gonna-
way it doesn't change.
So we're going to control the bid form still. So we have to input the bid form into that system. They then respond. So we own any mistake we make versus what they do. Does this also then do automatic math checking for them? Or is it still upon them to make the formulas work? Or
So as they're filling out the bid and the unit prices, at the bottom is going to add up what the
so it's
total
already
bid amount, and
so
they're
we've
going to be
added
able
the
to see it.
formula.
They're
So-
going to be able to see the final bid before they submit it.
So we control that formula. We do all of that ourselves.
Yes, the addition of all the bid items times the prices, we control that.
And what sort of safeguards are there? For example, that obviously on a public bid, when you get a sealed envelope, you get double custody, two people in the room, you open them, you record them. How is the software set up that I see 3 bids pop up because it'll tell you when they're there? Somebody wants to take a peek at one of those. How do you prevent that from happening, that nobody can see those bid till 1 minute after the bid time that's locked in?
So that's actually a very good question. So that is what the vendor calls a lock box.
Right.
So that is something that the vendor guarantees to some extent that nobody's going to be able to access it. So you and I cannot really control or know whether somebody got in there. Should somebody contest that somebody saw their bid ahead of time, then we could go to the vendor and they can demonstrate to us that nobody was able to see those bids.
So bottom line is they would have if we post it's a 2 p.m., the 31st, the bids are due, that their system would lock out anybody from looking at those bids until 2:01 on the 31st.
That is correct.
Okay. And then how do we, is there any, I guess if it's locked in, there's nothing you can do. So double custody isn't the issue because before it's a piece of paper and you want to make sure somebody doesn't have an alternate envelope. So this is, so what downsides, I mean, if you said, okay, this is perfect, but what would be the 1 or 2 but items that you're concerned about in this, and are they significant?
So originally I was concerned about the bidders. Will they be scared of the system? Will they be not wanting to do it? So we did an informant survey with a lot of our normal bidders, and they were in fact very happy that we were implementing this system. And one of the advantages that we have that for most of our bidders, they work with Caltrans, because that's the type of work that we do on the state highway system. So Caltrans has implemented the system, so they have already tried it, and they already are happy with it. So that was one of my concerns. Now, your question also is a very good one, because we are, we're going to go through this, and we're going to try it, and we're going to see how it all works. I think that we have spoken to the vendor, and we feel that the way it's going to be set up it's going to be good, and we're not going to have any problems. But there's an element of risk with everything new that we do, and that's why I wanted to bring this forward for your approval.
So I think it's a great idea. My last point is, I think the one risk I see, because previously, because people were handwriting things in, so we owned the bid form and the quantities, but what we didn't own was the total. Whoever puts that spreadsheet together, there's got to be 2 or 3 other people that checks the formulas, because you could put a sheet together that looks great, everybody's putting their information in, and it's making the wrong total. And the only way you're going to know that is if you test it blindly, and because we now own that. So, for example, you got a $100 million bid for something, and we're off $10 million in the formula. You know what? We own that. So, and the system doesn't check that. All it does is say, yep, your formula is there, it's in there. So, to me, it would be that's where you got to have 3 people, person who writes it, person who checks it, and a person who checks it independent of that, to make sure that that's inputted and it's perfect, because they're going to change every time.
Are you guys going to run through it,
So-
changing the number? Because
Chris-
the contractor owns the number, not the addition on a bid, right?
So Chris is going to correct me here if I
Yeah, but
if I
the totaling, we submit now an
Right.
Excel sheet.
That's right.
Has all our quantities. They just put in the numbers and it totals at the bottom.
So if the addition is incorrect, the rule is what you put in the unit prices, when that all adds up using correct math, that's the number that rules. It could be different than your bid amount.
I'm just saying that I think that's the risk,
So Commissioner
which we didn't
Newell,
know before.
Chris Cole, as you know, he's assisting me in running our construction program. He has more information that might be able to help explain the system.
Sure, thank you. So I think the question is a good one, but it might be somewhat moot in our situation. The contractor only has the ability to type in an item price. So if you look on the screen up above, the estimated quantities cannot change, and the equations are already set by the programmer of the software. So it automatically tabulates the total price per item and then the total price of the overall contract.
So what you just answered is actually simpler than that. You're saying it's a bid form they have, and we just put the quantities in.
Correct.
So we don't have to worry about the totaling, because that, I have to
That's
tell you,
correct.
in the world of doing estimates, I see every so often, if you didn't kind of know what the number was, you don't know if that formula is right, because you may have 100 line items in there, and somebody may miss one because they added a line, inserted it. So their software does that, so they kind
That's
of
correct.
that is a great answer.
Okay.
It's a good idea. Thanks.
Okay, Don?
Thank you. I just have one other question, because Commissioner Reinhardt asked so many good questions, and including many I couldn't even think of. So let's assume, for discussion purposes, that we have a bid closing, and I'll use this example, at 2 o'clock, and Caltrans has one at the same time, and the County of LA has one closing at the same time. Does the system have the robustness to allow all the potential bidders to log on and update their bids at 1:59, and 59 is 58 seconds?
So Caltrans has a different system altogether. It's the same vendor, it's
Okay.
Infotech, but Caltrans has a system that we don't have access to.
Well, but I guess my general question was,
Yes.
does the system have the capacity to handle lots of people logging on simultaneously, or is there a potential for it to become overwhelmed?
We believe that it has the ability to handle a lot of people at the same time.
Okay. And then the other suggestion I have is that, assuming this works and exceeds our expectations, that after you've had some practice with it, then I would encourage staff to have one of your tech conferences for the cities where you introduce this and encourage the cities to join in, just as Grover did with the DocuSign.
We'll be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Kevin?
I think the only concern is, since it is a cloud-based system, it would depend on what internet service provider you're using to access the cloud, and are you down or whatnot, and that's where you may run into problems. I'm sure the vendor and their software can handle more than hundreds of people logged on at the same time, entering data at the same time. I wouldn't be concerned with that. The only thing I'd be, like I say, would be concerned with is, since it is an internet-based product, that there are issues with either your provider or the internet's down, or for whatever reason, people are prohibited from entering at the correct time because they can't log onto the system.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You got more?
No, I was just going to move the item unless there was more
Okay,
questions.
I got a couple of questions before you do that. I think your summary said it was free to the solicitor, which is us. So who pays for it?
So it's a two-tier system. One is if a bidder just wants to bid a single project, they pay $50 for bidding that project. If the bidder wants to bid several projects that are within the system, they pay $600 a year, and they have access to all of them,
Okay. So it's
including
paid
other agencies that are
paid
bidding.
for by the bidders.
Yes.
Okay, the staff report gives us three choices. Authorize the use of electronic bidding for all future projects. Authorize the use of electronic bidding as a pilot program for a few projects. And the board can choose to continue using the paper-based bid process. So you had a motion, Newell?
I'll second, but I have a question.
Yeah, I was going to say, my motion is to go forward that we switch to all electronic.
And I'll second that, but I have a question. Assuming that you get into this and something isn't working, I assume we can always change our mind. So it's all future projects until we decide it's not. Yeah, so.
Okay, motion by Arnerick, second by Towson. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next item. (4.2). Approval of Ninth Amendment to Employment Agreement with Randall H. Iwasaki, Executive Director. And I understand this has to be, the whole thing has to be read, and
Right.
Terry Ann's going to do the honors.
On behalf of the board, the summary of the recommendation is the approval of a Ninth Amendment to the authority's employment agreement with Randall H. Iwasaki, Executive Director, proposed to amend his salary to $319,114.74 per year, and his authority paid deferred compensation benefit to $15,608.40 effective July 1st, 2017.
All other terms?
That's it? That's all you have to read?
There one
Yes.
line?
Okay, are there questions? Newell?
No, I was going to say there was all other terms of the employment contract remain the same. That's the last line on them.
That's accurate.
No, yeah. I move approval. Oh, sorry.
Okay, we have a motion by Arnerick, second by Pierce.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item, 4.3, authorization to execute agreement number 468 with Convey, Inc. for strategic communication and marketing services, and agreement number 469 with Creative Digital Agency for website redesign and social media support.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Lindsay Willis, Director of External Affairs. Realizing I can't actually scoot closer to the table right now, so I'll just try to talk a little louder. We'll try this. Thank you, that's a little better. So what you have before you is a request to approve two contracts. Earlier in March, The authority approved release of an RFP for strategic communication and marketing services. It was a 2-year contract for $300,000, which was what we put out as the RFP. We had 8 proposals received. We had a review committee made up of staff members from almost every department within CCTA and a few outside eyeballs as well. And we ended up interviewing 5 firms for that. And at the end of those interviews, there were 2 firms that stood out to the review panel for very different reasons. One firm had a really wonderful proposal for how to redesign the CCTA website, which was a big part of the original RFP. And they were not quite as strong in some of the other areas that we were looking for. And one of the other firms was exceedingly strong in those other areas, but their proposal for the website didn't necessarily wow the panel. So we discussed it as a panel, and our recommendation was actually to split that contract into 2 separate contracts and use 2 firms to play to their strengths to fulfill the needs that we need. Convey Inc. is a firm out of Emeryville. We're recommending them for strategic communications and marketing services to kind of continue building the CCTA brand and help do some staff support functions. And Creative Digital Agency is actually a local firm based in San Ramon, and they're the ones we're proposing do the website redesign. So their contract should actually be in the handout packet in front of you. The total amount will not change for the RFP. It will still be $300,000. It will just be split between 2 firms as appropriate for the services that they're providing. And you'll notice that there's actually 2 different start dates on their contract. We are proposing that Convey Inc. start June 1st, which was our original intention with the RFP, and Creative Digital Agency, their contract is set to begin in October, in part selfishly because that is the website redesign, and I'd really like to be here to be part of that, and I'm going to be going out on leave for a few months. So we decided to potentially delay that, but we are bringing that contract before you this evening so that upon my return, we can get started on that. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions? Is there anything on? No? Okay. Julie.
I just want to say this is a brilliant solution. And I commend our authority staff for being nimble and creative and not insisting on trying to do it all with one firm. My assumption here is that these 2 firms will collaborate closely with each other to make sure that they are in sync and producing similar themes and that sort of thing. And with that, I would move this. This is brilliant. Thank you. Second.
Okay, motion by Pierce, second by Haskell. One thing I would like to see, I don't know whether this has come up before. It comes up in my city council frequently, but for these professional service agreements, I think the staff report should list the firms that were considered and the rating matrix for those firms, so you can see a little bit more of the process. So I'd like to ask that you do that in the future. But we do have a motion and a second. Any more questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? There are none. The next item involves a contract with PG&E, and I'm going to have to recuse myself because I am a substantial owner of an architectural firm that has PG&E as a client. So I'm supposed to turn this over to the vice chair. Vice chair is not here. I'm going to use the chair's discretion and give it to Commissioner Tatson to preside over this item while I leave the room.
All right. Well, thank you. We'll wait till Chair Butt has exited. All right, so this is item 4.4, State Route 4, Balfour Interchange Project, authorization to execute amendment number 2 to our utility agreement number 410 with PG&E for joint utility trench relocation services. Is there a report? Seeing none? Are there any questions? Oh, that's right. This is the adjustment, right?
Right.
Okay, yes. Yeah, this is right. Okay. It's a motion by Commissioner Hudson, second by Commissioner
Taylor.
Taylor, right? And any further discussion? Any public comment?
Sorry,
Excuse me?
nothing.
Go ahead.
Slight discussion.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? And Commissioner Butt, will note, is absent. Well, no. If someone could go get him. This will be able to pass the gavel back to my right.
Through that. Better.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Next item is 4.B.6, approval to submit the draft 2017 Priority Development Area Investment and Growth Strategy to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and Association of Bay Area Governments.
Good evening, Chair Butt and board members. I'm Brad Beck, Senior Transportation Planner, and I'm here tonight to ask for your approval to, as Chair Butt said, to transmit the 2017 PDA Investment and Growth Strategy to MTC. The authority, like other congestion management agencies in the Bay Area, must prepare a PDA strategy and that outlines the authority's plan for encouraging and supporting development within designated priority development areas within Contra Costa. And the strategy has to establish a priority setting process for projects that are funded through the One Bay Area Grant Program. The revised, updated 2017 PDA strategy outlines that process and describes how we've integrated the authority's Measure J funding through programs 12 and 13, TLC and pedestrian, bicycle, and trail facilities with the OBAG call for projects. It also incorporates new growth forecasts from MTC and ABAG and includes the new RENA targets that were established and set after the 2015 PDA strategy. And finally, it provides additional research into market conditions within PDAs in Contra Costa. The latter is an updated PDA portfolio. It's the majority of the document, and it describes the opportunities and constraints facing jurisdictions as they try to encourage the development of their priority development areas. And with that, I ask for your approval to transmit, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
I see there's a PowerPoint attachment here. Have we already gone through this, or are you going to?
146 pages?
No, there's a PowerPoint that goes with this. Were you going to go through that, or?
I did not prepare a PowerPoint for this.
I think you're looking at a different item.
Oh,
The next one definitely has a PowerPoint.
oh, okay.
4B7 has one, but not B6.
Maybe I'm on the wrong item. You know what? I read item. No, I didn't either. Well, anyway, okay. Okay, yeah, I pulled up the wrong one. Okay, so no discussion, no questions. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Tatson, second by Hudson. All in favor? Aye.
Thanks, Brad.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay. Next item, 4B7, Approval to release the draft 2017 CTP update and draft CPT EIR for public review. That's the one that has a PowerPoint.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and do I ever have a PowerPoint for you tonight? I'm telling you, this is a great PowerPoint. Some of you may recognize the title of this item, the Countywide Transportation Plan, and you may recall that we have talked about this in the past quite a bit. We are now going to try again to issue a draft countywide transportation plan and have you adopt a final later in the year. So I'm going to go through a little bit of history here and familiarize you with the process. And what we're asking for tonight is that you authorize Mr. Iwasaki, the Executive Director, to release a draft countywide transportation plan and draft EIR, and that's going to be on May 24th for the CTP and June 12th for the EIR. So for those of you who have read Measure C and Measure J lately, it does require that the authority develop and occasionally update a countywide transportation plan. And this is one of the great things about Measure C originally in the growth management program, that we took all the cities and the county together and created a bottoms-up plan, and we developed a travel demand forecasting model. Everybody feeds their information into the model, and we can really look at the future, look at the 2040, see 20, 25 years out how the county is going to look. You're all familiar with the history, but this is actually our 5th CTP, the 4th update, and there have been four before it. The last one was in 2009. So you'll recall in 2012 and 2013, we updated the action plans for routes of regional significance. We released a draft 2014 plan. We had a very significant public input process where we had over 5,000 people come and tell us what they wanted in terms of future transportation improvements in Contra Costa and new programs that they wanted us to develop. We continued to incorporate those comments, postponing adoption of the 2014 plan, and went into 2015 with a second draft that met MTC's new guidelines, which were actually released in the middle of this whole effort. And then in 2016, a couple of things happened. The state shifted from level of service to vehicle miles traveled under SB 743. The authority decided to pursue Measure X and take it to the ballot. And so we, again, postponed work on the CTP, focused on the TEP. And then following the election in November of 2016, we came back to you with a work plan last December, and you approved for us to go ahead and try to get this thing done in 2017. Just by way of background, you all know that traffic is getting worse and BART trains are getting more crowded. And in Contra Costa specifically, on the highways, you may have seen in the past few years an increase in delay. And this chart shows what's happened since the last dip in 2013. Vehicle delays really been increasing. So we're actually starting with a 2017 base now, but the growth forecast shows from 2010 to 2040, 23% increase in households, 35% increase in employment, and you can see the two numbers there, 88,000 new homes, 122,000 new jobs for Contra Costa. We developed a new financial forecast that we'd like to use for this plan. We've updated all of our costs from 2014 dollars to 2017 dollars, and the plan also includes year of expenditure dollars as required by the MTC guidelines. So if we look at what was in the 2013 RTP, which is the latest adopted RTP, the total funds included in the RTP were $3.67 billion. And then if we assume new funding sources, and for this estimate, we did assume a new half-cent sales tax at 2-to-1 leverage. We get a revenue forecast of $6.45 billion. So together, these are at about over $10 billion that we have to invest, and we actually have a lot more than $10 billion in needs, and this map shows in the green the projects that we have funding for, and in the chartreuse the projects where we really need more funding to complete the projects. And if you throw in the programs, we're really up in the high $20 billion level as far as the total project and program need, and we have to come up with a financially constrained plan of about $10 billion. So we've done that, and we did that by listening to what we heard in the public outreach, by including all of the comments and suggestions we received during the Measure X process. And just here's a quick example of some of the projects that are in the CTP, the Regional Express Lanes, which are actually a Bay Area project from MTC, the I-680 interchange, and bus rapid transit on San Pablo. Just a quick look at what's in the plan. It's going to be 2 volumes this time, and the third volume will be supplemental reports. So the last chapter of the plan is about implementation, and we're trying to focus on a number of things. One of them is to reduce greenhouse gases and meet the governor's goal for reducing greenhouse gases by 2050 to 80% below 1990 levels. So we do have an accelerated electric vehicle deployment plan, an accelerated zero-emission vehicle plan, which helps us get to this goal that we're talking about in 2050. And the green line actually shows what Contra Costa can do if we use our innovation funding, which is included as a line item in this plan, to accelerate deployment of ZEV vehicles. We can actually achieve this goal. Second thing is to be a leader in innovation. And one of the examples shown here is how the 680 corridor would look as a express lane. And we've also talked about investing in I-680 to really make it a great place for demonstrating connected and autonomous vehicles. And that could be done by putting up some equipment there, but also by keeping the corridor very clean and very well striped.
Are we
and
going
very
to
smooth.
put, Martin, we're going to put that many lanes in? Because we can do the lanes, we don't need that technology. So
That
you
includes
need
the
that
auxiliary lane.
diagram, because I see 5 lanes there. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
We forgot about the buses on the shoulder here. And then finally, you know, if we really look at the future, there's a technology that Randy likes to call City 5.0, because he used to watch Hawaii 5.0, and he loved Hawaii 5.0. So City 5.0 is where the vehicles they may be autonomous, but they're also listening and hearing what other vehicles are doing. They're connected to other vehicles. And in this diagram, even the pedestrians are connected. So the car knows where the pedestrians are, and the vehicle knows what all the traffic signals are doing. And there's also observation about anything going on in terms of accidents and incidents and operational management. Now, this, of course, immediately you think about, oh my goodness, every Big Brother's going to know exactly where I am and when I was there. But in fact, this is all completely anonymous. So here's the schedule again. We're going to go live with the website and the e-blast on the 24th. You'll be able to download the plan. We are creating a separate website called 2017ctpupdate.net. There'll be a link to that from the authority's website. The EIR, and we do have to do a full EIR on this plan, It's going to be released on June 12th. We'll have a public outreach effort, which will include meetings with our usual committees, the CAC, the RTPCs. We're going to have a countywide workshop on June 29th. It'll probably be in this building. And we'll have an online engagement tool where anybody can see the highlights of the plan and give us their suggestions. And then we hope that the authority would come back and adopt the plan following certification of the EIR on September 20th, 2017. So that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the staff report gives two options: provide further direction to staff prior to release of the draft plan, or postpone release of the draft plan. Wouldn't one of the options be to approve release of the draft plan?
Well, the recommendation is that you authorize staff to release the draft CTP. The options are other than the recommendation.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, got it. Okay, questions?
Second.
Okay, motion by Taylor, second by Pierce. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Martin. Thank you.
Next item, 4.B.8, comments on draft plan Bay Area 2040, MTC's 2017 Regional Transportation Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The authority received a presentation on this from the Director of Planning, Ken Kirky, at MTC at the last meeting, and you gave him some verbal comments that are documented in the minutes. At the Planning Committee meeting, we discussed it further, and authority staff suggested that the authority may want to at least leave a marker here regarding a certain aspect of the plan which has to do with the housing forecast. So staff has prepared a letter for signature by the executive director, and I'll go through the points of that letter, which starts on page 4B8-7. And we, of course, are very pleased with the way the plan's gone, and there have been no surprises, and MTC staff has done a really great job of keeping us informed along the way, and we've had numerous meetings with the CMA planning directors and the Regional Advisory Working Group, and they've really gone through this step by step. So as we read the draft plan that's out on the street, we're happy to see that it includes all of the transportation investments that we requested to have included. We did want to include Measure X investments at the time when the draft was being prepared, but since Measure X didn't pass, they asked that we withdraw those projects. With regard to the land use projections, we've looked at both the Contra Costa projections and the Bay Region projections. And in Contra Costa, they initially assigned us a whole lot of housing and not a whole lot of jobs, and we commented on that back in the fall, and MTC responded, and they gave us a pretty good housing and jobs forecast that we think we can live with, and it's quite similar to the housing and jobs forecast that we had for the 2013 RTP, and we think with a strong economy we'd be able to actually achieve the forecast, which would require that we generate about 3,000 dwelling units per year in Contra Costa. Turning now to the regional forecast, staff has concerns that this number has jumped significantly since the 2013 RTP, from 660 dwelling units to 817,000 dwelling units, as it's documented in the RTP and in the modeling backup report. And so that number is high in comparison to a Caltrans forecast that we found. I do need to make a correction in this board letter that the Department of Finance has a forecast that is actually higher than the Caltrans forecast, and I believe similar to the 2013 RTP forecast. So if you look at the proposed forecast that MTC's put out there, and you translate it into an annual level of growth, the Bay region would have to generate in the next 23 years an annual rate of housing growth of close to 30,000 houses per year. And in the back of this memo is a table that shows the historic housing growth on page 4B8-12 for the Bay region. And it's been a while since we've hit 30,000, and this forecast would require that we hit 30,000 every year. The annual average has been about 22,000. So what we're asking in this letter, and we understand that ABAG and MTC have to adopt this forecast, and they have to meet some certain requirements, including housing the region's population, and there was also a lawsuit from Building Industry Association that required that certain actions be taken. So we're just asking in this letter simply that MTC and ABAG, they can assume this housing forecast. We have no issue with it, but we ask that they use it as a control total rather than as an actual forecast, and we'd be able to live with that. Our concern is that when we start to incorporate these numbers into the model and try to do traffic forecasts with them, we're not going to have a realistic forecast because we'll look at that report card for housing, and I don't think it's going to meet these numbers. So we'll have to keep adjusting and adjusting. So it's up to you whether you'd like to send a letter or not. And I understand that the regional agency has their hands tied in some fashion and might not be able to do anything in regard to changing this.
Questions? Julie?
Thank you, Martin. Martin and I had actually had a discussion with Miriam Chian of ABAG while we were at the workshop last week, and talking about the different numbers and the different projections. The ABAG total is the highest of the three that we're talking about here, partly because it includes compensation for the in-commute. That is a result of the lawsuit that we faced by the BIA. And so we have to assume that all of those cars, the growth in the in-commute, will all be housed in the Bay Area. So we have to add those houses to our normal projection. When you do that, you actually come up with a higher number than the Department of Finance. In discussing this with Martin last week and with Miriam, I asked Miriam to go back and check the numbers to see exactly where we were compared to Caltrans and compared to DOF. And she got back to me. The Caltrans numbers are based on recent housing production. So they are indeed 48% lower than the ABAG MTC control total. And remember, it is a control total. It's not a projection. It's a control total because it includes the growth in the in-commute. The Department of Finance, however, is only lower by about 10 to 15%, and that is approximately the in-commute. We are a little bit high compared to that, but not a whole lot. And so I think what we need to realize is that given the dearth of development we've had in the last basically 10 years, there's a lot of making up to do. And we've got a tremendous growth in jobs. It's about 10 to 1 for houses that we've produced. We have 500,000 jobs and 50,000 houses that we've produced in that amount of time since 2010. That's not going to get us there. So if we want to make a dent, we're going to have to do a whole lot more than we've ever done before. Or we risk our economy slipping, or we risk farming out a lot of our economy to other regions. So I will just say, as president of ABAG, I think that this is a fair number that ABAG and MTC are using as the control total. We did add to the forecast to get the control total because we had to. But I think it's a reasonable goal. Now, does that mean we'll meet it? Not necessarily. But if you don't have high enough aspirations, you're never going to get there. And I think if we want to have places for our kids to live and be able to work in the Bay Area, we're going to have to start building a whole lot more dwelling units, whether they are apartments, whether they're condos, whether it's senior housing, so that those of us who don't want to take care of the great big yard anymore can move into something much smaller and hand that off to the next generation. There's going to have to be a lot of growth in dwelling units in order to accommodate the kind of a lifestyle that the Bay Area wants to maintain. So, frankly, I think the letter's a little strong, but it's up to this board whether you actually want to send it that strong or not. I think we should correct the reference on and clarify the difference between the Caltrans numbers and the DOF numbers and put an accurate difference in there, because this is misleading the way it's written right now. But I personally wouldn't be objecting. So,
Kevin?
I'll agree with Julie and go ahead and take your recommendations for changes and updates, but I still think it's important that we send the letter just for us to put a stake in the ground and let people know that this is where we stand, this is how we feel moving forward. And as someone who is in one of those areas where development has been rather brisk, to say the least, for the last number of years, I think it's important that we let everyone know where we stand and where we need to be.
Dave?
Yeah, I actually didn't think we needed to write that strong of a letter at the planning committee meeting, mainly because I, for one, have never seen this kind of growth in San Francisco. How they could add 10,000 people is beyond me, and they, to me, have always been the problem child. And for them, I mean, to add 10,000 people is 4,000 homes. I mean, and they keep building. I'm seeing the same thing out of San. I don't see this being that far off with the new world order of trying to work in transit, et cetera. And frankly, I thought they did okay by Contra Costa. We're one-to-one jobs housing balance. I mean, we're one of the few we're the only large county that seems to be in balance. And I would soften it, but that was the recommendation I made before about housing. But I wanted who was that other people? Oh, no, that's Air District people.
Don, did you?
Thank you. Well, I would agree with Julie's suggestion that we reconcile the Caltrans and Department of Finance estimates. I wasn't uncomfortable with the letter, but I'm not as close to this as some of you are. And I think it really talked about the regional forecast as opposed to the Contra Costa forecast, and talks about a control total as opposed to saying change the forecast. So that gave me some comfort. One question I had was I agree with the comments about in-commute from San Joaquin, and I'm curious as to why there is no mention of in-commute from Solano.
Well, Commissioner Katzen, actually, in-commute from Solano is part of the Bay Area, and so it's not really considered an in-commute.
It's just a long drive.
No?
Sacramento County is where the in-commute begins.
Wow. I agree with Julie and everybody, but I do think we should send a letter. I think this is respectful. It highlights a few things that we're making as suggestions in technology and things like that. I think with the changes, let's send it. And Contra Costa is going to be the job growth center. There's no question. You're seeing in the Tri-Valley area on the south, just rapid growth in jobs. You can't find space down there now. So that's good news. So, San Ramon's got more jobs and they know what to do with. Right. Yeah, that's because there are a couple
Ready
of
for a motion?
Sorry.
Can I just
So
make-
I'd make them.
Okay.
Thank you.
Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would concur with the comments. I do think it would lend itself to a little bit of, certainly, as Julie mentioned, clarifying the numbers. I think softening the tone would be appropriate. I'd leave it to staff to look at the tone. I think Dave has spoken well in terms of that. I think the other thing that is really important that we emphasize, we've talked about housing, transportation investment. We've talked about the job growth, and I really think that that's something that we can put into our advocacy efforts that we as a region need to be looking at, investing and creating opportunities to job growth. And they keep saying, well, you can predict housing, you can't predict job growth, but I really believe that we need to be forceful in advocating for policies, at least, that will encourage the ability of job centers like Bishop Ranch to do the work that they're doing in terms of creating employment centers, and the Northern Waterfront Initiative. And it might be helpful to mention some of those initiatives, because just like we've mentioned the Gomentum Station, but to focus on that jobs piece of it, I think we have an opportunity there. So,
Okay, a motion?
I'll make a motion to, that we modify the letter to accommodate the map that Julie's talked about, and both what Hudson and Worth said in terms of the tone. I do think the jobs comment in there is significant. I think that's going to be a conversation you're going to hear repetitively from our county over the next decade.
Second. Okay, motion by Arnrich, second by Tatson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. I believe that brings us down to correspondence and communications. There are none. Associated committee reports. Are there any committee reports? Hearing none. Commissioner and staff comments. Chair's comments and reports. I have none. Commissioner's comments.
Just to announce, I guess, Tom.
Tatson, and then Arnrich. Go ahead.
So we had some informal discussion a few months ago about the need for electricity at the Gomentum Station. And subsequent to that discussion, the county has indicated their interest in joining MCE, and my understanding is that a subcommittee of the Concord City Council is recommending that their city join MCE as well. And what I was going to suggest is that if the latter has happened, then I would encourage staff to work with the city of Concord to approach MCE to see if they could work with us to put a solar facility out at Gomentum Station and report back to us at a future agenda.
Good.
I was just going to mention that I guess, Tom, you're not going to be able to make it to Friday's luncheon, so.
I can't, and I asked staff to see if somebody else could go. So
I'm in.
You're signed in.
So
too.
actually,
Thank
I had
you.
already signed up to go because I
Thank
thought
you.
that was great.
I
So I'm
only
gonna
have
go.
4 conflicts at that
No
exact
problem.
time.
So I'm going to be attending Friday to accept the award from IPI. And
IPA?
No, that's an IPA after the meeting. Yeah.
That comes later. Okay, any other commissioner comments? Executive staff comments? Randy?
Commissioners, thank you. A couple of comments. One, AAA Magazine, they've interviewed us, taken a lot of pictures out of Gomentum Station. They're going to write an article for their VIA magazine in August or September, so stay tuned for that. It's and stay tuned for some news dealing with AAA and Gomentum Station. You might like that in the future. On page 7.3-2, Engineering News Record, we did the Engineering News Record is a widely distributed magazine to a very few engineers. But if you're an engineer or architect, you get to read Engineering News Record. And so we did an article about our drone use, and so it was I thought it was a very good article, and thanks to Chris and to Ivan and others for the efforts on that drone. So the next step is going to be to take that data and take it to a large software company that does design work to see what more can be done with that kind of information, that LiDAR information. But once again, the idea is to use drones in areas where it's dangerous for surveyors to go out and be in harm's way. It's also to make sure that the dirt that we buy on this, we're bringing in import or borrow, so we're raising the profile of the road and building another road bed. We want to make sure the taxpayers get their money's worth, and so we'll fly that job, get video, and put that on our website, make sure they're getting their money's worth, and making sure that nobody's injured when they don't have to be or get run over or backed up over. Terry Ann has successfully completed her leadership in her supervisor workshop training, so congratulations on that. She can now be a good supervisor and a leader. Tim Hale is here. Has everybody met Tim Hale? Tim Hale is our new Ross Chittenden. And that's the way that he's been introducing himself. Hi, I'm Tim Hale. I'm the new Ross Chittenden. But he's really kind of the future for the project delivery side of the house. He comes from he used to work at Caltrans when he started his career a long time ago. And now he is lately, for the last 15 years, been working for Michael Baker International. He was their managed lanes lead for the United States. And so he knows a little bit about managed lanes. And so he's going to try to help understand that data and make sure that when MTC has a report that shows that the delay will start an hour earlier because of some information or some model, we want to make sure that's right. And so you can make some assumptions about flooding the general purpose lanes with violators, but that's probably going to not happen on day one. So we need to understand that data. And so Tim Hale, you want to say anything, Tim?
I just want to say I'm really excited to be part of the team, and thank you for the opportunity, and really looking forward to working with all of you to continue the success and innovation in the county. Thank you.
Welcome.
We had a text series that was a traffic cast. It's a device that Walnut Creek has placed on a half-mile increments along their heavily used arterials, which gives Rafat Ray, the city traffic engineer of the city of Walnut Creek, great information about the volumes and the congestion, what time of day, when they can take a lane in Walnut Creek. He has data to say to the Public Works Director, you can't take a lane after 2 o'clock because what will happen, it will break the whole system down. So he has good information, and so other jurisdictions here in Contra Costa County are interested in getting some of that same data. And so we're going to try to work with our MTC commissioners to maybe get an allocation of CMAQ money to provide the monies necessary to install these. One of the questions is that more maintenance? These things are hardened radios that Rafat has agreed to maintain, but he never has to maintain them. And so you guys are getting great information in the city of Walnut Creek. I just want the signal that when I make the left-hand turn onto Ignacio Valley Boulevard, that sense my mini truck coming to the stop so I can make that left, so I don't have to stop. But everything else is great. I can, outfit my vehicle with whatever technology we need. We sold bonds today. So let me say this. I was in New York City. We met with the investors. What they said, and I emailed, but I'll say it again, they said, this is a group that does what they say. And we wish you could sell more bonds because we love your credit. Now, we were downgraded by Fitch Rating Services to AA+, which we started a long time ago, which we got an upgrade a while back. We got a downgrade because they're worried about the next Great Recession. So in order to get to where we were in the Great Recession and even hit the 42.5%, we'd have to have a 46% reduction in revenue, almost 50%. And so in the Great Recession, which was almost a depression, we lost 24%. The reason why I know that is because Commissioner Pierce asked me to prove that we were better off in 2010 than we were prior to that. So I remember those numbers. We were under 25% under the engineer's estimate on 3 projects, so on and so forth. We also went to France to look at Easy Miles production. You probably need to announce that as a commissioner. But we went to, we landed in Paris, and then we made our way to Vichy, France. That's where the Easy Miles shuttle is being manufactured today. They're on their 3rd generation. These vehicles are a lot more easy. On the inside, it has straps so people can stand and hold the straps. It's got areas where you can lean up against these like mini seats. And then the area behind the seats is getting more refined to maybe hopefully hold some luggage in the future. But the reason why I went there is not only get an understanding of how they build it, but they have to build it in America. And if they want to get future compensation, or if we want to go after federal FTA New Start money, we need to build it in America. And so they're amenable to building in America. And they want to, at first we thought they wanted to build it in a plant they want to build. Now they're thinking more along the lines that they might want to negotiate with a partner that builds transit already, which probably makes a little more sense. And so we have one that's close to us to the south. It's not in Contra Costa County, it's in Alameda County, but it's in Livermore, Gillette. And so the other option is somewhere in New York for another bus manufacturer. And so The idea was to entice them to look hard at Contra Costa County or Alameda County, Gillig, or a partner here to make sure that those jobs stay locally. And so we came back and met with a company called Alstom, their director of innovation, and another person, their marketing director. They've actually invested in the Easy Mile. I think it was $17.5 million, and they think that this is the wave of the future as well. And so they're excited. So they're trying to build a pilot project that hooks up the neighborhoods to their high-speed rail called TGV. And so they made an investment in that. And then we also met with, I used to be on this, it's PARC, it's the World Road Federation. Anyway, there's certain areas that they study. They study winter operations. They study traffic operations. I was part of the traffic operations group. And what the groups do from all over the world is write reports, workbooks, if you will, to help people understand traffic operations, for example. So these countries like Brazil didn't have breakaway anchors. So if you hit a pole in the old days, it wouldn't break away. It would be a rigid pole, and if, depending on the speed and the severity of the accident, you might die. And so those kinds of things. So I met with those folks and reacquainted ourselves. And so you made your report that you were in France, correct?
No, okay. But I probably 3 sentences. They don't want to hear any more than that. Really impressed that when we walked into the factory at Vichy, they said, "You're the first Americans to see the second generation." The first thing we said is, "So when's the third come out?" Because things are happening that fast. This vehicle is 4-wheel drive now. They did away with some of the things, the changes in the lights and the fronts. The door is really open. It's a legitimate BRT. Really, really impressed with it. Alstom impressed me even more because while we were going through the presentation at the very end, he goes, "And now you're the first person to see this. We're going to have the first electric bus in the world," to which we told him, "We've got 4. But the point is, their philosophy is now door to door. The minute you walk out the door, they want you. They want to be a part of it. And that's, I believe, where the direction's going. And in talking to the Air District when we got back, they're now realizing that these $1 million buses are coming down in price. And if they get down to about $750, where the hybrid diesel was, we could be going to virtually all electric with the buses. And that could get very interesting.
So back to the bond sale. There was a lot of negative news coming out of Washington, D.C. for whatever reason. We happened to time the market again and got lucky. The market today, this morning, moved 9 basis points down, and so that saved us an additional $606,438 on that bond sale. So a lot of times it's better to be lucky than good. But the stock market dropped, and you would understand, 9 basis points movement down on long-term bonds. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so we just happened to sell bonds on that day. So it was just crazy luck. 2.7%, 2.67% all in. So that is like the lowest. I've been here 7 years, 1 month, and 1 day now. And my God, that's amazing. That to me is fantastic. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Okay, CCTA is launching a pilot with Scoop to promote carpooling in Contra Costa County. Peter wanted me to note this. The effort is a result of a partnership between 511 Contra Costa, CCTA, and Scoop. The pilot will offer a $2 discount to Contra Costa passengers who use Scoop to commute to several work sites around the Bay Area. The pilot is part of the 511 Contra Costa Carpool Incentive Program and is funded as part of our TFCA allocation. The press release will come out later this week. Contact Peter if you need more information. He's going to be acting while I'm on vacation the next 2 weeks. Congratulations, Peter. And a more formal presentation will be given to all of you at a later date once this is formalized. And lastly, I wanted to introduce Luna Salaver. And so the question is, what happens when Lindsay goes on maternity leave? So the idea is this. She's going to be gone 2 months. Is that right, 2 months? So 4 months. Okay, let's call it 4 months. Is it 4 months now? So Lindsay's going to be gone 4 months. So the idea is to provide an opportunity for internal staff to sit in that hot seat of dealing with the media, dealing with outreach. And so Terry Ann has agreed for the first month and a half or so to kind of carry that burden along with all of her other tasks to kind of deal with the press and keep me and keep us out of trouble. Then Luna's coming to us, and the reason why it's taken a month and a half is because she recently retired from government after 36 years working in the Bay Area, in the Bay Area public sector for the Bay Area Air Quality Management District in BART. So she retired from BART last December, and I think she's a great fit for, what we do. And so the idea is after Terry Ann's 1.5 months in the hot seat, then we're going to rotate that, and I think Fifi would like to do a stint, and Stephanie would like to do a stint as well. So the idea is to get them exposed to the media, because there's no real good training until you get to do that. And then Luna will be here to provide 36 years of experience that will help her, and she will make sure that I don't make any gross mistakes as Lindsay has done. So Lindsay will be checking in with Luna.
And if Lindsay prevents you.
Yeah, sorry. Lindsay, yeah. Lindsay has prevented me from making those big mistakes. Yeah, sorry. I like to give her a bad time. She's got to be on her toes all the time. So anyway, I think it's great opportunity, great arrangement. You've met her and Luna, and she'll be here in a month and a half. Terry, and thank you again for volunteering. So that's my report. Thank you.
Tom?
Yes.
Yeah, two things. First of all, she's not the only person I've driven away from the Air District. You did something in Tennessee.
Yes.
Are they the same people they're trying to steal all of our money at the Comentum? Can you talk about that a little bit?
No, so it's
not just Michigan, it's Tennessee. Anybody else?
I was invited to speak at the University of Tennessee. The University of Tennessee is trying to educate so the Tennessee contingent came to our Redefining Mobility Summit. They're interested in deploying new technologies. They just don't know how to do it because there's no real roadmap on how to do that. And so the University of Tennessee and the Oak Ridge National Laboratories, which is very sophisticated, they actually 3D printed a tractor, they 3D printed a forklift that works, and they 3D printed a Shelby Cobra. No, it runs. The forklift actually works. So they're on the cutting edge technology. The state of Tennessee, the Department of Transportation would like to deploy this, and so will the city of Knoxville. And so they want to know what we're doing. They're actually looking at a partnership with us in Gomenton Station. They're not looking to set up they want to set the town of Knoxville up as a test bed running on the streets. But they're not looking to duplicate, at this time at least, Gomenton Station.
If I can just finish, just remember what happened when we had you coming back to Air Waste Management, right up until it was time to come back there, and then they disappeared. Tell them the best thing to do is just wait, sit back, it'll all come to you.
Okay, anyone else? You have calendars for the next 4 months attached, and calendar of upcoming events. And before we actually adjourn, I'd like to close tonight's meeting in honor of Brian Kelleher's dad, Raymond Michael Kelleher. He passed away on April 22nd, 2017. He was born and raised in San Francisco, California, a 54-year resident of San Rafael. He is survived by sons Brian and Kevin and their spouses and 3 granddaughters. And with that, we are adjourned.